Now, thank you, Marco and Gilla. This morning we have seen and heard amazing speeches. So I have to say I feel a bit under the stress now of being up to standards for what we heard and saw. But what we are going to present today, I say we because we are three colleagues representing Science for Democracy. It's, well, me, Claudia Basta, social scientist, Utrecht University. And then we have Caterina Garone, a neurogenetic scientist and a scholar from the University of Bologna in Italy. And then we have Simona Giordano, a professor in bioethics from the University of Manchester. I hesitated exclusively because I'm starting off the speech, because I see Simona regularly, actually. So it's not being a moment of forgetfulness. The sessions that we're running today for Science for Democracy is different from what you have seen up until now. Maybe it's a bit more traditional for us because we have prepared some slides, which are going to see on my right side on the screen. And because it's a bit longer, in the sense that it's not intended only to share content, and so having just a unilateral way of presenting our contents. But the idea is to make it a bit interactive, so to invite you, basically, to reason with us on what the right to science can mean for your own individual lives and your own political objectives. During the session, we will have two people connecting remotely to the meeting room. They will be Michael Mancisidor. He is Vice President of the UN Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights of the United Nations. And for us as an organization, is really our reference person in the Committee of the UN, which is basically the committee that has re-articulated the right to science. We will see it shortly on the slides. Then we will have also, at some point in the presentations, Maciej Maril. I really hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. Is outreach coordinator of Science for Ukraine. Let's say, similarities between the two names is coincidental. It's an amazing initiative, what he is launching, but he will be the one telling more about it to you. And he's director of the Digital Humanities Center of hosted by the Polish Academy of Science. So, having named all the colleagues who will be helping me throughout this presentation, I would just like to kick it off, the first two slides, and then I will invite Michael Mancisidor, if he is online, to intervene. So, thinking of how to title our introductions to our association, we thought of titling Advancing Democracy with Method. As this captures the essence of what we are, definitely an association whose volunteers have a scientific background. We are scholars, researchers at all career levels. But our aim is political. We want to support the formulation of political initiatives and political goals by means of the scientific method. Today, indeed, we will present a bit the association, a bit our story, who we are and what we do. Then we will present examples from our running campaigns, but also from other international actions that are inspired in a way by the right to science. As I have anticipated, we will introduce some partners initiatives, and particularly we will give the floor to the coordinator of Science for Ukraine, who will tell you about one aspect of open science. And then it will be very nice to reason together with you about my right to science. So what the right to science can mean for each of us in this room. Before giving the word to Michael Mancisidor, I'm just here having a general slides on the steering committee members of our association, which was founded in 2018. We are registered in Belgium, so we are a Belgium-based association. And indeed, we promote the right to science as a structural component of liberal democracies. Our genesis roots in the Associazione Luca Coscioni, and our steering committee members, among whom myself and Simona and others, as I said, we are mostly scholars from all the scientific fields, more or less. All of them are more or less covered. We rely, of course, on the work and collaboration and support of a lot of activists. And our staff, I haven't screened people from Eumans who are working with us and are essential for us, obviously because you have seen them in other sessions and you have met them already. So here I'm just presenting a bit, our activists, again, all of them involved into one of the aspects or the campaigns that we are promoting at the moment. But don't be confused, because once again, we are not a scientific association. We are in associations with explicit political purposes and with an explicit political mission. Our founders, indeed, are Marco Cappato, well, who needs no introduction, and Marco Perduca, who unfortunately could not be with us, and Filomena Gallo, secretary of the Associazione Luca Coscioni, whom you have seen today talking remotely. If Mikel is online, I think that this is the right time to ask him to give you a bit of an introduction to what the right to science is, and especially what the right to science is in the framework of the United Nations Human Rights Framework. Mikel, are you online? Okay, we will connect with Mikel when he will be online. We just move forward. Okay, here I normally the talent of a presenter is measured by how much people in the audience look at the presenter instead of the slides. So this is one of the few slides that unfortunately demanded to have some content on it, because how many of you who are not from the Associazione Luca Coscioni or don't have a background in any of our associations have ever heard of the right to science? So I think we could easily conclude a minority. Personally, I've spent my whole life, my whole professional life in academia through the typical track that any professor does, so the PhD, the postdoc, the traditional track. I had never heard of it. And even more worrisome, I have a postdoc in applied ethics, and I belong to a human rights scientific association, so I should have known everything about it. I didn't know anything. At no point in my educational training, someone has ever explained to me and introduced me to the right to science. So I have to thank our founders, basically, for having made me know something so important. In a very essential formulation, the right to science was first articulated in the framework of the Human Declarations, the Declaration of Human Rights, as the right that every person has to take part in the cultural life of the community, to enjoy the arts, and to participate in the benefits that result from intellectual progress, especially scientific discoveries. It sounds very vague and poorly practical. And when I first started to reason on it, I started to search intellectually, in a way, how this right was relevant to, for example, my own field of investigation, which would be environmental sciences in my case. Then I've also discovered that in 141 of the in-force 202 constitutions, there exists some mentioning of the right to science, which means that each of us, from the very primary source of rights in our nations, have the guarantee that this right should kind of trickle down into our legal systems and the policies that our governments issue and promote, etc., etc. That reads simple, but it's obviously extremely complex. Because saying that someone has an entitlement to the right, for example, to access the benefits of scientific research and scientific findings does not mean that the laws that are generated by the constitutional rights, for example, do really implement practically that right. Also, it's very important to say that as an association, we are not promoting a sort of scientism in society. Obviously, scientific knowledge always needs to inform policy and laws, but not to dictate them. What stands in between are ethical, cultural, and also contextual considerations that it's on politics to do. Which is why, once again, as a scientific association, we want to serve political purposes and not, per se, scientific purposes. That is something we do already in our professions. It is exactly at this point, because I mentioned in the question of ethics, that I would like to give the word to Simona, professor in bioethics, and now, no one better than her can take the word from your own words.